Tonight on Open Line, we are talking about the 34% property tax increase coming to Nashville homeowners and the referendum trying to stop that in its tracks. I have two guests joining me tonight, and we are also taking your calls. So go ahead and call this number on the screen, 615-737+, and we'll get you in the lineup. Jason Freeman and Tori Venable both joining us tonight. Thank you both for being here. I want to get right back to the phone lines. Edward has been waiting. Edward, thank you for calling tonight. What's your question or comment?
Okay.
Go ahead.
My question is, at one time in Davidson County, we had a great economy. We had everything going good for us. We had events coming. We had things happening here in Nashville. Nashville was still growing, which is a good thing. But we had money coming in. And then the mayor and the CDC decided, well, we got a virus, so we're going to have to shut everything down. And when we shut everything down, of course, we don't get tax dollars. And then you had people going out of business. They're going out of business, they don't pay taxes. My question is, should we open everything back up again to where we can get some money coming in and do away with the stupid 34% tax thing, and that way get everything back the way it was at one time, so we can have money to survive? We're going under the way it is. And these people are going to get tired of it, and they're going to vote everybody out. They're going to vote the mayor out. They're going to vote the council out. They're going to vote the governor out. They're going to vote everybody out before it's over. They're going to get fed up. They want their freedom. They want their freedom to be able to go back the way it was before all this mess happened. That's my question. Aren't they worried about losing their jobs and vote them out?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Edward. And I think that all of us can agree on one thing: we just want life to return back to normal. But I think it is important to point out that this ball was really rolling before the pandemic happened, before businesses had to shut down. This isn't just a last 6-month issue, is it, Jason? I'll start with you.
Well, the last 6 months certainly haven't helped. And I do just want to remind people out there that 200,000 Americans are dead. A former council member, Tony Tenpenny, passed away tragically from COVID-19 very recently, over the weekend, I believe. And this is a very real disease, and it's killing people. And so when we talk about why we're not open, it's because the mayor is doing the right thing. The mayor is trying to look out for people's lives, and we appreciate that. This problem started in 2017. If you look historically, there's only been 3 times where the city has accepted what's called the revenue neutral tax rate. And that's what happens after a reappraisal. That's why sometimes last time, if you lived in Cleveland Park, or I live in Inglewood, my taxes went up, and I was fine with that. In fact, Tori likes to say that the voters should have a voice. Well, in my district, we voted for Emily Benedict, who told us she was going to raise our taxes. Raise our taxes, one of the reasons that we voted for her. And across the city, residents voted for people who said they would fix the tax rate because the voters understood what the problem was. I don't know what neighborhood Tori lives in or how her district voted, but my district voted for Emily Benedict, who's going to raise taxes. We cannot survive on the revenue neutral tax rate. It happened back in, I think, like 1963. And immediately the next year it had to be fixed. And it happened in 2009. And when Carl Dean did this during a recession and set the revenue neutral tax rate in 2009, the very next year we had to refinance our debt because we couldn't pay our bills. And they took out a new credit card. And that credit card bill came due during the past few years. And so we're paying for debts of the past. One thing Tori and AFP and Metro employees agree on, Metro employees have been fighting against incentives and land giveaways and big ticket construction deals for a long time. But the fact is that those things have happened. People that were elected did them. And now what Tori and AFP are suggesting is that we should fire, half the firefighters and the librarians and the parks department because things that happened in the past are now coming due. And, we have to pay our bills, and we have to continue to pick up people's trash, have parks open, have libraries, community centers, and our schools. When people say there haven't been cuts made, 2 years ago, the Metro school budget was underfunded by $45 million. There are kids in our schools who don't have textbooks. When people say that we aren't making cuts, that's just not accurate. We've made plenty of cuts over the last decade.
Sure.
What's the one cut that we
and Tori, I mean, there have been raises, promises to firefighters and police officers that the city has had to renege on and say, oh, we can't make those
many
now.
times.
So where does Americans' Prosperity stand on that? I mean, if this revenue doesn't come in, there will surely be some sort of cut to services. And especially when we talk about metro schools, police, firefighters, that's a big problem for our city that's already struggling. So what does Americans for Prosperity say about that?
So we don't want to see anyone lose their job. We don't want to see, especially the essential services. And we definitely think it's a scare tactic, and it's a scare tactic used to leverage Metro employees to say that if they don't vote for this tax hike, that they are going to lose their jobs. And, they're just trying to scare the citizens of Nashville into swallowing this massive tax hike that many people cannot afford. So they're going to threaten police, fire, teachers, all the things that are actual functions of government, are actual services of government that people want and use.
But our actual services of government are not funding metro schools right now. I mean, many of our schools are a sad state of affairs, and that's just reality right now. It's happening.
Many of our schools are sad. I mean, how many times have the legislators or lawmakers promised teachers a raise that never comes to pass? Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem with the school funding formula. That is not tied, that's not one city's specific problem. And that's something that we're going to work on, is the school funding formula, because we should be funding students, not buildings and bureaucracies. We should make sure that every child, every parent has a choice to have the best education that works for them. And that could be a different public school, that could be a charter school, it could be a homeschool. Especially if these schools are not going to open, people are mad when they are not able to even send their children to school. And so, yes, the schools are underfunded. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed.
And that's my next question. Has Americans for Prosperity looked at the Davidson County budget and said, this is how you could do things well with the money that's coming in now?
No, we have not. And the reason we have not is because we have not had a meeting with the mayor at all. We haven't had a voice at the table. We've been trying to elevate the grassroots, the individuals across Nashville who know they can't afford this. We've been elevating their voice. So it's not our role to draft the Nashville budget. It's the Nashville Metro Council, the finance committees. They're the ones that should be doing it. They should be making cuts now. They knew that this was happening back in the summer, and they have refused to date to make any cuts. And to think that if they're going to wait until December, halfway through a fiscal year, before they make any cuts so that they can make the cuts seem even worse, that's a terrible way to govern. They should not be doing it this way. They should actually be looking to cut the things that they can cut now, not services.
Let's get back to the phone lines. Gwen is on the line. Gwen, thanks for being with us. Go ahead. Gwen, you're on. Floor is yours. Go ahead.
This is Gwen. I just wanted to say that I agree with Gwendolyn that called earlier regarding the city allowing big corporations to come in and get the breaks from the city. Being here for 20 years or more without having to pay taxes, but they expect us to pay taxes when I live in the Antioch area, and we have nothing out here. Everything is either in East Nashville or Midtown, downtown, South Nashville. They have not put anything new into this area in years. Everything has been going downtown, but yet, or in other areas to build those neighborhoods up, but you haven't done anything to build these neighborhoods up. Not to mention, they talked about, there would be no policing. We don't have much policing going on in this area. Only if something goes on, there's a serious accident, maybe someone has gotten injured or hurt or shot or killed or what have you. But they don't come here. You don't see them policing the streets or the neighborhoods or even the main areas. But so they're not spending any money. We don't have new shopping areas. We don't have new restaurants or places to eat. They've taken everything away from this area and have placed them in different parts of the city, and they're not spending money here in this area. But yet we are expected to pay these taxes that 34% taxes, but we're not reaping the benefits for them.
Right, you're not seeing the return on your investment or potential investment there. I hear what you're saying, Gwen. Jason, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely understand where Gwen is coming from. I know a lot of the council members in Antioch very well, and they are tireless advocates for the investment that you need. And what I want you to understand is that this amendment that is being brought forward will, as I said, I do not believe that this should be on the ballot, and I don't believe it's legitimately written in a proper form that would be, having us have an election. But if it were to come to pass, it would ensure that you will never get that investment in your area permanently. It will cease, because everything that we function as a city, and I think it's really telling that Tori just admitted that they've not looked at the budget and they don't know. And it's, the things that they mentioned, $1 million is a lot of money, but it is also 0.3% of this metro budget. We live in a city that has a $2.6 billion budget. So you can tinker around the edges. That's not going to change the fact that we had to set this tax rate. We had the lowest tax rate in the history of the county. It was a catastrophic mistake made while Megan Barry was the mayor. And it's something that we have tried to fix for 3 years. 2 years ago, the firefighters, the police officers, the transit drivers, the school bus drivers, our union and the teachers wrote an op-ed and said, let us tell you the truth about the metro budget, because no one else will. And unfortunately, Tori is not telling the truth here. I mean, what is going to happen if this were to happen is we are going to, things as you know it will cease to function, right? And we're already having problems with things like trash collection. Now that's a separate issue from outsourcing, but we're having problems meeting the needs as it is. Up until very recently, there was a massive shortage of call takers in the 911 call center. Mm-hmm. When Tori's saying that we expanded the budget, look, Metro employees in support staff in Metro schools got a minimum wage of $15 an hour. And we think that that's just a morally responsible thing to do, because those folks were working 2 and 3 jobs just to get by, exceptional education people working with the most valuable students that we have. And they had to leave work, go to their second job, go to their third job. And guess what? They're Metro taxpayers too. And so when Tori is saying that we should make cuts and at the expense, and somehow we're pitting Metro employees against taxpayers. Metro employees are taxpayers. They are homeowners. There's 18,000 of them, and they support the city. I don't know which part of the city Tori lives in, but in my part of the city, people value public services.
Jason, let me ask you this, because I asked you, hang on, Tori, 1 second. I asked you earlier what the city will look like if this referendum goes through and there is not a 34% property tax hike. On the reverse of that, what will this city look like if this continues on as voted on by the Metro Council and property taxes are increased by 34%? Does that make everything wonderful in Nashville?
So next year is a reappraisal year. We have them every 4 years. And so it will reassess people's property values. We won't know exactly how good of a position we will be in until the revenues are unraveled from COVID. We projected out how much we were going to lose in revenues. So far, it looks like we haven't lost as much in revenues, but we don't know how long this is going to continue. COVID could spike back up in December. There's a lot of unknowns, but we are in a much stronger position. And I want people to understand what is going to happen is Opry Mills Mall is going to pay the $300,000 a year that they've been putting in their pocket for the last 4. The guy who lives in the $11 million house is going to pay $27,000 a year in taxes. And yes, for a homeowner average homeowner, we're going to pay $200 or $300 a year. In exchange, we get $27,000 out of the richest person in the city. It's the most fair way we have to fund the city. And I wish that we had other ways to create revenue. But unfortunately, when we go up to the state legislature and try to increase taxes on companies like Amazon or HCA, it's Tori and her friends that are on the other side saying, no, we can't hurt these businesses because we have to stay a very business-friendly state. And so I understand being against the incentives, but we should be asking more. If we want to have lower property taxes, we should have a higher corporate tax rate. We should be taxing the profits of these companies that are coming here and doing so well. And, unfortunately, at the state legislature, we're up against people like Americans for Prosperity.
Tori, I'm going to let you respond, and then I have to take a commercial break. Go ahead. I know you're chomping at the bit.
First off, I am from Antioch. I grew up in Nashville. Unlike Jason, who's a transplant, I'm part of the old Nashville. And Antioch, unfortunately, with it being part of the General Services District, you guys are actually going to see a 37% property tax hike, as is Hermitage and some of these other areas. So we say 34% just to keep it simple, but the general services areas will see about a 37% property tax increase. So that out of the way first. And this tax hike is nothing but slapping a Band-Aid on the problems that have persisted for decades. The reason we need the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act is so that we can stop the out-of-control spending, so that we can stop the cronyism, the land giveaways, and the taxpayer incentives that have been happening on the taxpayers' backs. These things have to change if we are ever going to appropriately fund the things that we should fund in government. They have to change. And that's why I would encourage everyone to go out and vote on December 5th for the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act as a charter amendment.
If that happens, we will find out perhaps tomorrow. Okay, I have to sneak in a commercial break. When we come back, more of this debate. Stay with us.